isn't in the news, but I figured it was something important to share, so hopefully you can read this. It says here, we are tracking 10 anti-trans bills in Oregon in 2023. The legislation impacts 4 categories, and this is from a website. Thought that would be important to share.
We realized that 7 out of 8 school districts said that one of the main challenges they faced were teachers feeling untrained or underqualified and uncomfortable teaching a lot of the topics that were required by the standards. And teachers felt like they do not have enough adequate professional development opportunities. And also 4 out of 8 districts reported that they need more health education resources, such as speakers and specialists.
This is more than just about sexual health, you know. It's about the power to stimulate, you know, large-scale social change. Thinking about the role that men and women play and how they interact with each other. It has an ability to create a cultural shift and really address many, many social issues, again, besides just sex and sexuality. And it protects children in their early years, and it invests in the well-being of generations to come. You know, I have contact with my teen parents, and their moms and dads in my class in the 70s and 80s are in their 50s now. And the kids that were born in my class are in their 30s. And I have the value of being able to say, what did I do right and what did I do wrong and what do we all need to do differently? And we need to talk about it, and we need to not be afraid to talk about it. And we need to know that when we do this, we can dramatically shift the lives and change momentum of so many people.
School-based health programs are super important. They help us reach kids and families. Kids spend 8 hours of their day in schools, if not more than that. So the policies and practices that we implement in the school setting have a huge impact on kids. So in Lane County, through local data and conversations with key partners in the community, we have been working in these 5 priority areas since I've been in my position. So the first one, and probably my biggest portion of work, is around mental health and suicide prevention. The second one historically was our largest program pre-pandemic, but it has since taken a back seat because we've seen such a need in mental health and substance use prevention instead. But we did do a lot of work around like physical activity and nutrition programming in the past. The third one is tobacco and substance use prevention. We're seeing that vaping prevention is a huge need for our schools right now too. So I've been doing some work around that in the past year with some of our districts. The fourth one, which I will dive deeper into in a minute, is STI prevention and sexual health education. This is our newest priority area that came in about 2022 because, as we saw in the slides earlier, STI rates in the state of Oregon have skyrocketed, and we saw that especially in our county among young people. So sexual health education with youth became a massive priority for the work that I do. And then this last piece is youth engagement and youth voice, and that kind of encompasses all of those other priority areas. So I hold a youth council with high school students from across the county. We meet a couple times a month, and I hear from them about what's going on in schools, about what they want to see change, and the supports that they need within the school setting to address some of these health priority areas that we're identifying. From the quantitative survey that we did, we found that half of administrators and teachers named a lack of professional development opportunities as a big barrier to sexual health education. Almost half also named a lack of content area expertise as a barrier. More than a third named a lack of classroom time. So again, integrating sexual health education into other areas can be a huge benefit for teachers who are already really strapped for time. Less than a third of teachers reported that they were very familiar and comfortable with the state health education standards. So the first one, offer more paid professional development opportunities around sexual health education for teachers. One thing that we're doing and that we did last year as well for our professional development events is offer substitute teacher stipends. So we get that covered for the school district so that that's not coming out of their own funds. We also have a list of evidence-based curriculum that we can go through with teachers or district personnel that are adopting a curriculum for the entire district. So we can talk through what those different options look like, as well as provide funding to cover any costs associated with that. And then the last one is holding community forums for parents and other community members that have an interest in learning more about what their kids are doing in school and that might have some concerns or questions. We were talking before the symposium started at our table just around the fact that partnerships with public health entities can really take the heat off schools. And so like if I can go in and talk to a district, I can kind of take some of those harder questions so that my principals, my teachers are not under fire for any of what they're doing. So that is a good opportunity for us to step in as like a health authority and really provide some of the evidence around these topics.
So, speaking of important, this right here is, in my experience, what drives what the districts see as important. It's the report card that every school district gets at the end of every year that shows your attendance, it shows your test scores, it shows on track to graduate. None of this has anything to do with health education. And because of that, it is something that falls way down on the list of priorities. It's not state tested. It's not on the ODE report card. It doesn't factor into whether they're on track to graduate, and it's not tied to any funding. So from an administrative point of view, it isn't important. This is not a Woodburn issue. This is more than that. I love our administrators and our superintendent. But the realities are that it leads to less important when it comes to staffing. It's seen as an elective and becomes a dumping spot for counselors. Dumping ground. So in our school, Health 1, we teach, it's meant to be a freshman, sophomore class. And then Health 2, their second semester of getting health is meant to be a class for juniors and seniors after they can all drive and the new realities that they're dealing with as drivers and the health topics that go into that. However, because of the lack of electives that are semester long, it becomes a dumping ground for a lot of students. And so currently 65% of Health 2 students are sophomores. And after this year, they'll never have health education again as juniors and seniors. They'll have met those requirements and be done with health. Ideally, you'd love to have 2 to 3 full-time health teachers. But the reality of what we have is 1 full-time health teacher, and we have a football coach, a PE teacher who are not licensed to teach health. So they each teach 1 class because they can get away with that. We have a choir teacher who teaches a class. We have a Russian lit teacher who teaches 2 classes of health. And we have a long-term sub because the credentials are less important for the sub. So long-term sub teaches 4 classes of health, and that sub has never taught health education before. So then it comes to advisory and social emotional learning time. This is about 1 to 5 times a week, depending on which district you're in. You're getting about 25 to 45 minutes when you're in there. Again, I'd love to see 2 to 3 full-time health teachers. I'd be over the moon if there were 2 credits required of health. But the reality is that you have content teachers who are not trained in teaching these things, but because of the laws, every year we have to get sexual health, but they're only in health education twice, so this stuff has to be covered in advisory. So all content teachers are assigned. They have no training. It's usually bought with expensive curriculum. There's no accountability to whether they're following it or not. It becomes essentially a study hall for the kids and a glorified extra prep time for teachers. Is it important to parents? The University of Michigan does a MOTT report. I don't know what MOTT stands for. In education, we love acronyms, so they all mean different things. But MOTT report comes out every couple of years where they identify parent concerns when it comes to health and health education. And so this is the most recent one that came out in 2023. And you can see on there the overuse of devices, social media, internet safety, depression, suicide, bullying. Now, the things that we have mandated that we have to teach through ODE on drugs and alcohol, smoking, vaping comes in at number 10, drugs and alcohol at 15. Then we get to sexual health, and according to the parents, number 20 is sexual activity. Number 24 on their list of concerns is gender issues. Yes, this is national. They also then break it down. I couldn't find the breakdown for 2023, but in Woodburn, we're a district that's 87% Hispanic. And so where I start with my curriculum is this list of parent concerns. And if it's on here, then it's something that I want to make sure that we're teaching. And so this is the 2020 list that we used when we came up with our curriculum, our current curriculum in Woodburn, to make sure that we're covering these things that parents see as concerns. All right, so let's talk about sex ed. If you know this clip, I would love for it to have played, but if you know this clip, it's from the movie Mean Girls, and essentially what he says is, abstinence is the way, don't have sex. If you have sex, you'll die. Here's a box of condoms. And that is the entirety of the sex ed talk that he goes through. And unfortunately, for many of us, that's what sex ed was like. And for many of the parents of the students that I teach, that's what sex ed was as well. So we have 20 days because they have to have it every year, so they're definitely going to have it every year that they have health. We have a total of 20 days, and these are all the topics that we need to get through in that time. It's extensive. All of them are important and need more than a day to be covered, but a day is what most of them tend to get. We know it's important. These are the numbers from the 2021 youth survey, behavior survey nationally, because Oregon doesn't participate in the survey. 21% of high school students are currently sexually active. 30% have ever had sex. 52% used a condom last time they had sex. And 21% drank or used drugs before their last sexual experience. So in a classroom of 30 students, 7 are currently sexually active. 2 more have ever had sex but aren't currently sexually active. And 21 have never had sex before. So looking where that was compared to the 2015 survey, which was the last one done prior to that, you've got, let's see, 6% have had sex with 4 or more partners, which is down from 12% in the 2015 survey. 30% have had sex, down from 40% previously. 21% are currently sexually active, which is down from 30% previously. There are causes for concern in these numbers, though. Fewer students are using condoms. Some of that is more knowledge and information about other forms of birth control. But a lot of that too is, in talking with my students, the prevalence of Plan B and the use of that as contraception. Also, alcohol, drugs are just as prevalent as they were in 2015 when it comes to that. So more knowledge and teaching about risk factors needs to continue to happen.
How do you reach a balance between wanting 2 credits and yet not having enough qualified, competent teachers to teach it the way that it needs to be taught well?
I don't know if it's a lack of, there are teachers out there who are qualified to teach that. But, I'll just use our district as an example. We use teachers who aren't trained in health education because if they can teach a one-off class in it, I think the rule is as long as it's less than half of your teaching day, you can teach any subject. But if you're required to have 2 credits of it, now you need to have more trained health educators because you're going to have more health classes. And so that would, I think the teachers are out there, just the districts are finding creative ways to get more use out of their teaching dollars. I can have someone who is the choir teacher for 5 periods, and then for that 6th period, we'll have them teach health. So I think by making that a requirement to have it as 2, then you're going to have to staff it with at least 2 full-time. I think there will always be some of that, but with 2 credits, you're going to need more certified health teachers to be able to do that.
So I want to talk specifically about public health and sex ed and how I have found that it's actually a really helpful thing to have happen. So these are kind of the 3 reasons why I think that public health should partner with schools to teach sex ed. So first, that public health is centralized governmental influence, that they can increase capacity by outsourcing, and that they can also help support health equity in our schools. So first, for our centralized governmental influence, I have found with public health, we talked about it being a team sport. Most public health offices are really familiar with what's happening in their county, and they're able to refer students, teachers, anyone to other organizations. We also lend authority to outreach efforts. It's a lot easier to say the government, public health is coming into schools than it is to have a nonprofit. People get suspicious that nonprofits have their other agendas. We're tax funded, so we have to represent the taxpayer. We also have additional funding that we can access. Government isn't insanely well funded, but there are ways and there are grants that we're familiar with that can fund these outreach efforts. And for us specifically, I was actually going to ask, I didn't have a chance to, but I don't know if public health in Oregon actually is able to offer direct care. We can. So when I go in and teach, I bring in the nurses, much to their dismay. I feel bad for making them talk as much as I do. But they are actually coming in, the nurses that can offer STI testing, the nurses that can offer reproductive health care, and the nurses that can offer reproductive wellness visits. So it's really nice because students are able to meet nurses who are really nice and really cool and really chill, and then access our services because we are legally able to offer our services to people under 18. Public health also increases our capacity by outsourcing. We are trained educators giving direct instruction. I heard in a lot of these presentations that teachers do not feel ready to teach sex ed. I get it. It is awkward. Imagining being an algebra teacher and then having to do a condom demonstration in front of children that I'm going to see for the entire year can be a difficult thing to think about. And that totally ignores also the fact that there is a lot of trauma-informed education that we have to be a part of when we're teaching this stuff. It's bringing things up for students. I go to webinars every single day learning about the new ways that herpes is spread or these really difficult things. I do anonymous questions because a lot of times I have to look at the question, bring it back to the office, look up the answer, and then tell students because they have really good questions and they're really difficult. So expecting a teacher who's not medically trained is really difficult. And it's taking off pressure off teachers as well to actually have to learn this material, to have to prepare this material, and it gives them additional time. One thing that I really like about our classroom model is that I'm able to come in with the nurse. We're doing like the general condom demonstration. We talk about dental dams, all that kind of thing. And then the teacher's back in the corner. So if a student has an issue, if something's brought up, they're someone the student can go to, they're someone that the student can trust and act as that additional support as another way to support our students in their learning. And it allows teachers to act as that known support, which is what I talked about. We want to make sure that teachers are someone they know. I notice when I go into classrooms, students do kind of get a little uncomfortable. They don't know if I'm going to be chill. They don't know what's going on. So having both sides and having someone that students know is really important. And it also supports health equity. So regardless of school funding, educators can teach students. So whether a school has the capacity to fund health teachers, whether the schools have capacity to, take a teacher out of teaching another classroom, we're teaching the same curriculum to everybody every single time. And we're always offering the same amount of times. It's up to the schools how much they utilize us, but we are there for them. Our outreach workers can also visit other community organizations and groups. We talked about I talked about going into a substance use program. That is something that we're able to do. I have gone into, we have kind of a similar thing like teen council for our local domestic violence shelter. I go and I talk to those kids. So we're able to have a little bit more flexibility with who we're able to offer the curriculum to. And then our curriculum is consistent and medically accurate across the board. We're public health, so we're going to all the CDC webinars, we're making sure that we're double checking, we're always trying to keep the most accurate stuff because it's part of our job, so it's not teachers having to double check that their curriculum is medically accurate, it's us who already get the CDC webinars and all of that. So keeping youth coming in and talking to students, maybe kind of like a big brother or a big sister style, really, really helps. College students, I imagine there are a lot of public health students at Willamette who would be willing to go into schools, and they would have the time to go through trauma-informed curriculum. They would have the time to know what's going on. They would have the time to educate themselves. I know Willamette students are busy, but it allows them to make it more of a priority, whereas a teacher may have a ton of other responsibilities on their plate. Another cool thing that we've done, it doesn't work for me because we don't have a college anywhere near where I am, but UW, which to you guys is University of Washington, to us it's the University of Wyoming, when they do mass testing events for their students, they recruit nursing students to do the testing. So that is super helpful for them because nursing students get direct experience and it expands their reach. I suspect that nursing students, it would also be super beneficial for any nursing students interested in public health, knowing that so much of their career will be education, to be a part of things like this.
So I was wondering, with hearing from the educators in the room, especially, I can't remember your name, but the one who spoke about, Holly, thank you. I remember that. So, but I like the idea of hearing from educators and other people in the room, or even Rose, hearing about how it wasn't just Rose teaching this, that's other people that are teaching it. Are there advantages, or are there, what are the pros and cons of having the teachers facilitate these curriculums versus someone who's an outsider coming in? Because a lot of teachers have come to me and said, we think it will be more powerful if we had somebody else come in who they don't know, who they can kind of not look at as, oh, it's just my teacher, it's the next thing, but this is somebody brand new. But the teacher is there to support and always be there. And because I got to tell you, every single time I facilitated one of these trainings, after we talk about sexting, a kid always comes up and shares that it happened to them recently, that somebody asked or requested or forwarded, and it's heartbreaking, but it's true. So again, just to reiterate my question, what do the educators in this room or people who have experiences of other people outside of your classrooms coming into your classrooms to teach curriculum, what are your pros and cons about that? Is that something that I should continue doing, or?
So one thing I wanted to share is, so Oregon, Sasha was just talking about the adoption process. So districts are required to adopt a K through 12 curriculum that's comprehensive. So it wouldn't be just a 6th grade curriculum or a 7th grade curriculum. And so like they have to go through a rigorous process, and then they have to pick something off that adoption list. And if they don't, then there has to be a justification of why. So I would strongly suggest, like, not creating your own curriculum, but maybe some resources to enhance what the standards are telling us. And then we're making the shift, K-12, of teaching standards instead of teaching to the curriculum. So the curriculum is the tool that supports it. So I just want to reiterate that as a lens of the K-12 lens. That standards drive that piece. So, and then Mel wanted to talk about the other piece.
Thank you. Mel Nolan, Willamette SD. And I was in a middle school classroom, 6, 7, and 8 for 20 years. And I'm recently out. And I am out of the classroom. I am an ELA teacher that was told you get to teach health. So I'm in that category, but I became passionate about it. And just bringing in other folks. There are pros and cons, you're right. You should definitely keep doing that. The kids love it because they hear me all day, every day. And I'm there to support, like you said, as a person that they know. But sometimes, and I've had this experience as an adult, you feel more comfortable talking to a stranger about things or telling them something because I don't really know you. I'll probably never see you again, but I know that you know things and can help me if I need it. So that's a real plus that I have seen with students too, is they know that you are an expert, that you know things, that you've seen these things before, and they probably won't see you a whole lot, but they can get to you because they can talk to me if they need it. So it's a really nice, I've seen that be a great dynamic. I had women's health professionals from our community come in. I had Marion County health people come in, and everything they did was valuable. So I would say it's definitely more of a pro than a con. So keep doing that.
Hello. I totally agree, and I think that the way that our system has always worked is that we are always partnering with a pre-existing health teacher. Like, I am never just going into a school. Before I came, our health department kind of just did a big assembly and talked to them vaguely about condoms. I did not love that. At all, because there was no ability for students to ask questions. There was no sort of interaction. And I have encountered other schools in Wyoming because we're kind of strapped for teachers' resources, just like everybody else is, but we have a really hard time keeping teachers. One of the health teachers that I really like is she kind of stands as this health teacher who helps students and has them do presentations, reflections, and then brings in a bunch of local experts. So she brings in me and I talk about sex education. She brings in a local mental health counselor to talk about mental health and all of that. She brings in another expert in our community to do gender and sexuality. Not because she doesn't know it herself, but because then students are able to talk to an expert, and through doing that, then meet very nice people from all the organizations that they now can access, which is really fabulous, and I think it's worked really well. I really like it if I can go into a organization or a school more than once. As it stands, we kind of run into the same thing where 9th grade health is super easy to get into, everybody has to do that, but there's not really a standard health class for 11th and 12th graders. I wish there was, because I find if I go back into organizations a second time and there are some students who don't know me and some students who do, the students who know me are like, oh yeah, Rose is so cool. And then we have like great conversations and it's really, really fun. And it's another touch point for them to be like, oh yeah, you're coming back and we're learning these things again. So building relationships but still being like the fun aunt who comes in and talks about sex and then leaves, which is very fun. And I do, yeah, the stranger thing, they're not worried about it. It's not embarrassing to talk to like your algebra teacher about sex. Like, it's just me. You probably won't see me unless you access our services. Though I have had students then come in and have an appointment with me and be like, I was like, I warned you, I told you I might do your appointment. I don't know what to tell you. Marissa.
Yes, the fun aunt seated next to you.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say that I think this is a great case for existing partnerships and sustaining partnerships between public health, ESDs, school districts, because, you know, for me, I've been in my position for 3 years, and so I have relationships with teachers, with administrators, and have built that trust over time where you can come into the classroom, you recognize the kids, and have worked with them for a number of years at this point. And so I think that really helps create that safety with the students and with the staff too, because, you know, it's a vulnerable thing to hand over your classroom to somebody else, even for an hour. And so I think it's super important to just like keep showing up. I try to get out to every single one of my schools at least once a month. It gets really hard because we've got like 100 schools. But I think, yeah, the more partnerships and relationships we can create to support students and teachers, the better it is for everyone.
I would. Good. Okay. I would echo the relationship piece. Anne with Planned Parenthood, who runs the Teen Council program. You know, when someone comes into my classroom and speaks, I'm responsible for what comes out of their mouth, and so I trust Anne. I've known Anne for a long time, and so whoever she brings in, kid-wise, to speak to our students, I know that they've been trained. I know that they've been vetted and figured out, and so I have full trust that Anne's going to put the right people in place to speak to the kids in our class.